Well, I lead by example. So number one, I don't pay for referrals or get paid for referrals in most cases because I don't want to have competing interests that might leave the client's values and priorities as a second priority. That's not okay with me.
This is the Staying Power Podcast, a show that explores the challenges business owners face as they grow. I'm Brandon Hall.
And I'm Thomas Castelli.
And together, we ask the tough questions to show you that running a business is not for the faint of heart. But if you have staying power, you'll overcome your challenges and achieve lasting success.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Staying Power Podcast. Brandon Hall and I are joined here today with Mark Wald, founder of Supporting Strategies Los Angeles, where his team of 40 virtual employees specializes in providing exceptionally experienced finance and accounting support to hundreds of growing startups, small businesses, and nonprofits across 10 states. In today's episode, Mark shares his secrets to growing a virtual accounting practice, including attracting clients via referral networks, how he prices and scopes engagements with his clients, how he recruits and maintains top talent, the challenges he faces along his journey, and much more. Mark, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show today. Would you be able to give our listeners a little information on your background?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. I grew up to a father who's an electronic engineer in Silicon Valley. My mother's MBA busybody, can't sit still. So I kind of have that engineering problem-solving mindset and run 100 miles an hour drive behind me in everything that I do. I studied economics at UCLA. I worked at a business bank in the back office accounting and finance department, then went on to higher roles in finance and systems reporting analysis, and eventually leadership positions in Fortune 500 companies, some small businesses and startups, working as a CFO consultant. And now for 6.5 years, I've been running Supporting Strategies Los Angeles, which is an outsourced accounting and finance department for growing businesses.
Nice. And we understand you have a business Supporting Strategies where you do some accounting work. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about that business?
Sure. So as a consulting CFO in my prior career, I was frequently setting up processes and systems for the businesses that I worked with, and then recruiting and training lower level accounting and finance professionals to kind of keep the wheel turning day to day and fill that role long term. And I'd work myself out of a job and then move on from one client to the next. So with Supporting Strategies Los Angeles, I recruit and hire only professional accountants to work on our team, people with 15, 20, some of them even have over 30 years of experience working in the accounting and finance departments of the kind of businesses that we look for as clients. And so I'm able to look in as a CFO to our client businesses and very quickly understand what they need in back office services, systems, and financial reporting insights, and then bring my seasoned team to deliver that work ongoing into the future and maintain long-term client relationships. So we really act as the entire accounting and finance department of the businesses that we work with and help the business owners operate their businesses like an enterprise.
Awesome. And I know you came from an industry background. How did you determine it was time to start this business instead of just continuing on the career path you were on?
I'm a hard worker, as I said before, so I found myself pulling all-nighters 2 or 3 nights a week just to get more billable hours in and grow my practice when I was working as an individual consultant. And I realized that I needed to scale my team in order to grow the business top line and work with more companies in total. So it was kind of just a natural progression for me. And Supporting Strategies is a franchise business. So I was approached by them circumstantially. It was just fortuitous timing where they had just begun franchising a business that they started in Boston 10 years prior, and they were looking to expand across the United States through a franchise model. So they asked me if I would be interested in becoming a franchisee, and it made a lot of sense for me to use their kind of business model in a box and be able to quickly launch and start delivering services to an expanded client base as opposed to try to build it myself from scratch. So I did start with no employees at February 2014. So I hired my first employee then and brought on my first client. And now we have 40 employees and about 230, 240 clients 6.5 years later.
So that's pretty good growth for 6.5 years of business. What do you attribute to the growth? Is it primarily coming from the franchisees, or is it like organic, something that you're doing on the side?
Yeah, most of my business I get by way of professional referral introductions. So CPAs are my number one referral source, and that's because they, number one, understand the value of the work that our team delivers to our shared clients. And number two, they know that we don't compete with CPA firms for tax and audit work. We're very specifically focused on back office bookkeeping and finance support. And so the CPAs know that we're not going to steal their tax and audit business away from their clients, but at the same time, we're going to deliver high quality work that makes the CPAs more efficient in their work function downstream. We also get referrals from attorneys and CFO consultants and other advisors to businesses as well.
Interesting. So the CPAs don't want to do any of the bookkeeping work or the accounting work that you guys are doing. They're just focused on the tax and the audit.
Yeah, and we also get plenty of referrals from CPA firms that have their own in-house bookkeeping, but they recognize that their bookkeeping services are really geared to serve the tax return and the tax compliance process, not necessarily to help their client businesses run day to day. So if you're doing after the fact bookkeeping and just categorizing expenses at the end of each month and really only focused on what's 100% deductible, what's 50% deductible, and let's get depreciation right, you're really missing the mark on giving the business owner actionable insights each month that they can use to make good decisions about how to manage their company to achieve optimal success. So that's really our sweet spot, is getting involved in the day-to-day operations of the business, supporting functions like expense reimbursements, payroll processing, as well as revenue recognition, financial reporting, and higher level analysis of those financial results.
Very nice. So how do the referral conversations go? Like, how do you even start? If you're talking to a business owner who doesn't get referrals, has never even thought about referrals, or maybe they do get referrals, but they haven't thought about systematizing that and really attacking that as a way to grow, what do you tell them? Like, how do you start that sort of process? What do the conversations look like?
You're talking about like a CPA or a CFO or someone else in my network?
Yeah. Anybody in your network. You said you grow primarily through referrals, and I don't know that you would necessarily see the type of growth that you've experienced unless you were intentional about growing through referrals. So what does that look like?
Right. Well, I lead by example. So number one, I don't pay for referrals or get paid for referrals in most cases, because I don't want to have competing interests that might leave the client's values and priorities as a second priority. That's not okay with me. So really, I lead by example. When I'm talking with a prospective client or an entrepreneur or anyone really in my day-to-day life and professional day, I'm always thinking, well, where are you going? What's most important to you? And what do you need right now? Have you just invented a new product that you're taking to market on a crowdfunding campaign? And do you have your intellectual property secured? Do you have terms and conditions set up on your website to protect you against consumer claims in the future and manage expectations of your customer base? Maybe I need to refer you to the right attorney in my network who has those skill sets and experience. And so I'm thinking about the other people who collaborate with me in support of those same shared clients and sending them opportunities, and they see those examples and they want to reciprocate. And so they're thoughtful about the value that my firm brings to our client base, and they send referrals to us as well.
Good. Referrals are always good to have. Kind of drilling down into some of the challenges you face, I guess shifting gears a bit in your business. One of the things we've talked about, before this call was that you don't offer a one-size-fits-all package solution, which is what a lot of people or a lot of other businesses are doing these days. So just kind of wanted to get your take on that and what challenges you face when presenting your services to clients.
Sure. Well, I guess the market is kind of segmented. There's businesses on the fairly low end of the fee, like budgetary constraints, where they're looking for bargain basement pricing. I want to pay $299 a month and get all of this, or I want to pay $699 a month and get this package. I've rarely seen a one-size-fits-most approach like that works well to serve the needs of the business that are actually growing and that have changes evolving over time. So we try to customize our solution and our scope of services to fit each unique business that we're working with. We take the time, I put my CFO hat on, and I speak with the business owner or operations manager or CFO in the company and get intimately familiar with what's happening in the business today, where are they headed, what are the pain points they're experiencing, what are the growth and new challenges they're anticipating. And then we look to right size the solution in terms of technology and processes and people with skill sets to address those needs today and position the business to grow successfully into the future. And you can't do that with a one-size-fits-all package. You really have to take the time to understand the needs intimately and customize them.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see that a little bit here at our CPA firm as well. How do you end up pricing these engagements if they're not a package, a fixed monthly price? Do you do it hourly? How do you go about actually, coming up with the price for the scope of work you're going to be doing?
Right. Well, with some engagements, we're replacing a resource that moves on. Maybe somebody didn't work out or the job got too big for them or what have you, and maybe there's an existing budget in place. So we can adopt that same budget. Let's say it's $2,000 a month, and we can fit our scope of work into that budget, but it's all based off an hourly rate and an hourly cost at the end of the day. In other cases, we might do a deep dive and review the accounting files and records of the prospective client business to get familiar with the volume of work and the nature of different types of transactions that are occurring. And through that lens, get pretty good insight into how much time it's going to take to do a good job for them. But there's a lot of squishy in the middle. It's a variable amount of time that you have to spend interacting with the different stakeholders, be it the employees of the company, their vendors, their customers and partners over email and phone, and doing ad hoc analysis of different reports and systems. So it's hard to quantify that amount of time up front. What we try to do is be really thoughtful about the insights we can gather and then come back to our clients and say, this is what we're seeing, this is how much time we think it's going to take, and we can bill hourly to start and move to a flat monthly fee pricing once we've mutually understood exactly how much time it takes to do the work on a regular ongoing basis. What I don't want to do is set expectations wrong with a client where they think that the price is going to be X, and once we get in, we realize that we really need to be doing X, Y, and Z to fully address the needs of their business, and have them be disappointed that we're asking them to pay more than what we originally talked about. But what we don't want to do is compromise on the value and integrity of our work product. So if we only do X and we don't do Y and Z because the client's not willing to pay for it, at some point in the future, they're going to be disappointed because they're trying to go through due diligence to sell their company. And the auditor has questions and takes issue with the fact that Y and Z weren't performed properly, or the CPA who's doing the tax return or the audit work later can't do their job well because that work wasn't done by our team up front. So it's really a losing proposition to try to shave scope and have nobody do the work. What's better is to redesign the workflow and load balance with other resources in the client to meet a budgetary constraint and still make sure you're covering all the bases. But to answer your question more specifically and directly, we usually start with an hourly fee-for-service engagement, set a not-to-exceed budget cap, and work from there to align on a monthly flat fee.
How do you have that conversation with a client or a prospect up front? You know that they only want to pay $1,000. You know that they need X, Y, and Z, and it's going to cost them $2,000 a month. Do you even bother? Do you just say we're just not a good fit, or do you try to convince them that the $2,000 a month is what they need? How do you have that conversation?
Well, I'll just go a little deeper into the same things I talked at a high level with you about. I'll point out to them why, based off experience. Here's an example of a business where these things, the Y and the Z, weren't performed, and this is the pain that they experienced. They actually, our firm has been brought in as kind of a last-minute Hail Mary to help save a few deals when a company was in market to be sold, and let's say a recurring revenue business that has software as a service like subscription licensing. They were not recording revenue in accordance with GAAP principles. They did not have proper accrual-based revenue recognition. They didn't have any supporting schedules that an independent auditor could get confidence that the revenue numbers were accurate. And so the acquirer wasn't confident to assign a price to the business based off of revenues that everyone could agree to. And ultimately, the deal exploded. So why would you want to underserve yourself on a month-by-month basis to save a few $100 if that could potentially undermine a multi-million-dollar exit deal? You wouldn't. You want to put the time in up front to get the work done right, thoughtfully and correctly each month into the future, because then you're ready for diligence, you're ready to raise capital, you're ready to get debt from a lender, and you can make good use of that information on a regular monthly basis as well. Understanding how your business is performing lets you make quick decisions to add value instead of like if you don't know how you're doing, you can't forecast the future.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, that kind of leads us into some other challenges that people face, and that is, setting the right expectations for the clients and being able to demonstrate the value. How do you balance all of this with the client so that you still remain profitable at the end of the day?
Right. Well, I make sure our clients, I'm all about transparency. So our clients know that we pay our staff fairly for the work that they do. They're highly experienced, seasoned professionals, so they have a lot of competency and they're not making minimum wage. And in order for me to have a rewarding work environment where those people are engaged and committed to a long-term partnership with our business and with our clients, they need to have work that's interesting to do. They can't compromise on best practices, process controls. They need to feel appreciated. So it's really a partnership that we establish with our clients, where our clients hire us because we know best how to attract, hire, and maintain that level of competent resource. And we know, based off of our breadth of client mix, the best practices in tools and processes for those staff members to be following. And our clients kind of give us authority to manage our team and our processes accordingly. So really, they're hiring us to be a self-managed accounting and finance department, or to partner with their internal accounting and finance resources and round out the team with all of our best practices. So if they don't recognize the value that we have to offer there, then we're not the right fit, like you said. If they don't take our advice on the X, Y, and Z scope of work that is the best fit for their business, then they should be hiring someone else who's willing to work according to their preferences and priorities.
Yeah, I guess at some point you just got to be comfortable saying no to certain prospects and just knowing when it's not the right fit. One of the things I wanted to drill down into is you mentioned you had over 40 employees, and you often hire these employees that have 20, maybe 30 years of experience. Would you be able to drill down into how you acquire these staff members in the first place?
Sure. So our business as a whole does recruiting online. We use Indeed, as well as plenty of other online job postings. And it's a high volume activity. We get thousands, and we do over 2,000 interviews a year across our network. And every candidate, for every one person that's hired, it's 260 plus resumes that we're screening and dozens of interviews. So it's a lot of work to find the right people for this job. Also, we work as a team. So we have a team-based approach, and the best fit human beings, professionals to fill the role are people who have prior work experience working in a team-based approach with an enterprise level accounting and finance department. So we're not hiring people who've only ever been a bookkeeper, or who were an office manager and they learned how to print a check in QuickBooks and now they call themselves a bookkeeper. We hire people who've worked as staff accountants, controllers, sometimes CFOs in other businesses, finance managers, and they know how to collaborate with team members. They understand the value of proper checks and balances, segregation of duties, and documenting your work. And so we attract people who want to continue working in that high caliber environment with team members who are at their level, because it's rewarding. It feels good to work with people who you can count on to do as good a job as you would do yourself. So when our candidates see that and we filter to the right set of candidates, it's a win-win for everybody.
Have you ever tried hiring anybody and then training them who hasn't had the skill set, or have you always just hired people who are experienced?
We've tried hiring some more junior level folks, and they may be very bright, competent individuals, but we have a virtual team. And so we don't have employees that are literally sitting shoulder to shoulder working full time on just one business, where they have the luxury of time to make mistakes and learn on the job and kind of figure things out as they go. We need people who know the drill and can perform better than the one individual person that client company would otherwise hire. And so, no, as a business, we've made a decision to only hire people that come with that experience out the gate, because they're much more likely to be successful long-term in collaboration with the other team members on our staff.
And how do you go staffing projects? Like, what's your strategy in terms of building teams around clients?
Well, most of our client engagements are long-term recurring work. We may have some upfront project work to get historical work caught up on, to correct mistakes from the past or what have you. But in all cases, we have a big matrix. We maintain a few sets of spreadsheets and other databases that let us see the respective skill sets and systems experience across our entire team. So it's easy for us to identify, oh, Susan over here has specific experience with this software system and has worked with other businesses in this industry. And Susan reports to Christina as a manager, and Christina has experience on these other clients that are like that one. And so we'll right size the team and the client together when it makes the most sense. And sometimes we have to pass on a client relationship because we don't have a team that's going to be set up for success from the beginning, and we don't want to fail the client. So that's an opportunity we might refer out to one of our partners who's a better fit.
Kind of just circling back a little bit to the question of how you acquire the talent in the first place. You mentioned you use Indeed, and there's a lot of resumes that you have to review. Have you ever did an outbound recruiting process where you would go and seek out and identify, a potential staff member yourself, like, using LinkedIn or something along those lines?
Not directly. I've had some colleagues, other business partners refer me to individuals who are looking to change roles. But ultimately, in my business, when I'm talking with the candidates that we're looking to hire, I tell them very directly, I know you can make substantially more money if you went to work for one particular employer as a full-time resource for their company, if you're willing to drive into their office and probably work 50 or 60 hours a week, but only get paid a 40-hour-a-week salary, and so on. You're not coming to work for Supporting Strategies Los Angeles because we pay top dollar for you and your capabilities. You're coming because you want the work-life balance and the full package that we offer. When I was working in industry for individual companies, I felt like I was always the or among the top performers in my department and on the floor that I worked in. And it was very frustrating when I felt like I was getting let down by other more junior staff or people who didn't care as much about their job and they weren't really carrying their weight. So the top performers in an accounting and finance department are elated at the opportunity to work amongst a team of exclusively other top performers. And so that itself is a big draw. And if money is not the primary motivator, then that is a really close second. And the other is the flexibility, because our employees get to work from their home office on the systems and hardware that we provide, but they get to set a flex schedule. And when they're off the clock, they're off the clock and we don't bother them. So it's a nice value exchange where they're taking a little bit of a pay cut so that our business can make a modest profit margin and still deliver excellent work and value to our clients.
Do you ever run into a situation or issues with that sort of model and mindset in terms of growing and scaling? Do you ever run into an issue where you need the people that are going to chip in and produce more and take on more responsibility, but everybody wants to focus on work-life balance instead? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Well, I need to honor the commitments that we make with each of our team members when they come on. So if somebody comes to work for us and says, I'm looking for a job where I only need to work 30 hours a week, I don't want to work a minute over that because I'm burnt out. I've done 60-hour work weeks in my prior career for 22 years, and I don't need that anymore. I need to honor that. And I can't expect that person to make exceptions for our business ever, and certainly not on a regular basis. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't ask, hey, by the way, we have this need. Are you available? Would you be willing to put in some extra hours for this? And they may say, I'm not interested. And that has to be okay with me, because otherwise it's not a fair value trade. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So we always hire ahead of demand. We hire people 1 or 2 months before we know we're going to need more staff, and we get them trained and integrated. We spend a lot of our own overhead cross-training between team members so that we have the flexibility. And that way, if one team member wants to take vacation or is out sick or they have a client that has extra unplanned demand for their time, there's already somebody else who can backfill and take the workload off their plate without one person having to bear all that weight themselves.
Makes a lot of sense. And, that's an interesting point you brought up on the cross training. Since you're hiring a lot of people already skilled in what they're doing, what type of training are you providing them at that point? Are you just providing them training to integrate them with your systems and procedures, or what level of training are you doing there?
Yeah, well, there's some client-specific training because each client business has their own unique processes and needs and sometimes specialized software tools. So there's some training there that happens across every client. We have our core set of technology that we use most commonly. QuickBooks is one of them. We also use Xero and NetSuite and sometimes some Sage products. So we train on the accounting software tools. We want our team members to know the full capability set of the tools they're working with, so because our clients are hiring us to be the experts. So it's not acceptable for us to perform work in a less efficient way or a less appropriate way when there is a better way that's the best common practice for that tool. We need to have our team members learn the best way to do things with the tools and systems that we're working with so that we can deliver that value consistently to our clients. Does that make sense?
Makes a ton of sense. So, we ask this question to everybody who comes on the show, and that is, what was the biggest challenge you faced, the most hideous challenge along your journey, along your entrepreneurial journey, that almost made you quit and make that W-2 job look very, very good?
Well, different challenges at different stages of trajectory. I think early on, I assumed the best in people and I extended obscene amounts of credit to a few clients where I was continuing to pay our staff to do work for them for months and months longer than the client had budget to pay us, because I was banking on the fact that they were good people, that they wouldn't screw me over, and that they would eventually be able to raise new capital from investors and pay the bills. And that still stings today. It's hard for me to think about how much money I've lost just betting on the goodwill of the clients that I was servicing that couldn't afford to pay for us. So not doing that anymore. We're not a bank. We're not in the business of taking credit risk and lending money to other businesses. So we only work with businesses that are committed to paying us timely for the work that we do.
And just real quick on that, how do you hedge your risk in your engagements today?
Well, a few ways. We're big fans of efficiency. So most of our clients sign an ACH auto debit agreement that says that when each of our invoices are due, the money is automatically drawn from the client's account and deposited into our bank account. So no human being needs to spend time doing that. It's all software driven, and we don't have to spend time chasing after aging accounts receivable with a client that is too busy or for some other reason isn't paying us on time. So that helps a lot. We have a lot of our flat fee engagements. The clients are paying us on the first of the month for that month's worth of work. So we're getting paid even before we do the work on those accounts. And there's fair value trade on the other end. So it makes sense for the client business. And in some cases, we just have to tell the client, I'm sorry, we're going to have to pause work effective tomorrow if you're not able to get your balance paid in full so that we can continue working with your best interest in mind. We have to look after our own as well.
Well, and so in that case, what if they're like, oh, I'll get it paid, and they don't. At what point do you actually cut them off?
It depends, depending on each client. There's some cases where we've taken a personal guarantee from the owner. If we value the relationship there, we can accept credit card payment. We pay merchant card processing fees. So if the client doesn't have the ability to borrow money from anywhere else, but they can borrow money from a credit card company, you can pay us, cover the merchant card processing fee. Now we're not lending to you, you're borrowing instead from the credit card company, and we can continue working with you. But if the client is completely tapped out and they have no more credit available anywhere else, there's probably other problems that mean that the work that we're doing isn't the top priority anymore. And it doesn't make sense for us to keep digging a deeper hole.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We also are doing cash flow forecasting and financial forecasting for many of our client businesses. So we're staying ahead of those eventual breaking points anyway. So it's not like we're often surprised by that happening on a Tuesday. We knew that that was going to be the case 3 or 6 months ago, and we were trying to help the client navigate around that before it becomes a big problem.
That makes sense. Yeah, we've run into that a few times in the past, and I don't know. I think that part of that is just not setting clear expectations up front too. If you set the clear expectations that, hey, your invoice is due X day, you have Y days to pay it, and if you don't, we're not going to work anymore. Like, we're going to turn off our services on Z or Y plus 1 day. I think that sets the stage for you to be able to go in and have that conversation and not have to worry about hurting anybody's feelings. And if they throw a big fit and everything, then you say, well, look, hey, it was in the engagement letter. We talked about this multiple times up front. We don't want to leave you. We would love to keep working with you, but we also have to get paid for it. And now you're just talking business owner to business owner. You're not talking from a place of emotion and like, I need to be paid. It's no, this was part of the contract. And that's been our experience, at least. So we try to detail all of that out in the contracts that we have with our clients, and then even have a conversation about it, not only during the sales calls, but also during the kickoff call, just to kind of reiterate those expectations. But expectations go both ways too. So it also, you talk about, here's our expectations, but then you can ask the client, well, what are your expectations? And you can tweak that if you need to. So
I agree, but there needs to be mutual understanding and respect. And so one of the expectations that I set with our clients is to make sure they understand all of our employees are W-2 employees, and they get paid every other Friday, no matter what, for the work that they do. So it's not a matter of if the client thinks the work was high value and approves the payment that the staff gets paid. I'm paying the staff no matter what. So that's my obligation and my commitment to the staff. And my expectation is that the client's going to be fair and respectful to our business and pay us fairly and timely for the work that we deliver.
Yeah, this kind of just leads me into a question I wanted to ask before, but forgot about. So, know you work with clients within have revenues of anywhere between $1 and $10 million, right? What was your reasoning behind that range?
Right. Well, we have pre-revenue clients that don't have a dime coming in income, and we also have some accounts with revenues north of 10 million, up to a couple hundred million even. But really, the sweet spot is from 1 to 10, and that's because a business that, let's say a law firm with one practicing attorney, they might be bringing in $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year in revenue. But for our team to do a good job, we need to have a reasonable budget of time and cost to the client business in order for us to deliver consistent value, right? And it's hard for a business that's earning less than $1 million a year consistently to justify budgeting even $500 a month to the bookkeeping function, right? So businesses that aren't at least on their way to breaking $1 million in revenue probably aren't in the right mindset to budget for the level of support that we offer. And businesses that are north of 10 million a year in revenue are probably starting to think about hiring internal accounting and finance staff to work on their team. And for many of those businesses, we still partner with them, and we kind of load balance, divvy up the scope, where our team does some things and their own staff member does another. We have a lot of clients that, as they're growing past the 10 million mark, we're helping them recruit and train internal resources, and we're reducing our scope of work along the way. But that's really where we see the bookends on our client size.
Yeah, I have to say that makes a lot of sense, because, what we see is we sometimes see, the smaller clients with less revenue. They come to us, they want, they hear about everything that could be done in the accounting field. They want the analysis, they want the bells and whistles, and their budget's $200 a month, like you were saying before. They're bargain basement pricing, and sometimes it just doesn't make sense. So I guess at some point, there has to be a cutoff of what you're willing to accept, because you can't deliver what the client's really looking for the price that they're willing to pay. And sometimes it just doesn't make sense to work with clients of that size. That's
right. But if a business is small, but with very clear plans to grow aggressively, then they may be willing to budget additional investment up front to build the rails, right? To build the processes and systems that they're going to scale with the company without having to redo everything from scratch later. And so those are great fits for us to work with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. So I guess those folks, they're more or less, they're in the mindset though of, hey, look, I know I need this function. I know it's not going to be, necessarily the most inexpensive thing, but I'm willing to make the investment in it today so that I have it going forward.
And it may only be a couple $100 a month to start out, but then this happens and that happens, and there's another 3 hours of work we have to bill for here, and a 10-hour project that sneaks up. And I don't want to have clients get frustrated and feel like I did a bait and switch on them because I'm asking them to pay for more work later. I want it to be a partnership where they're like, I'm so appreciative that you have the competency and the bandwidth to grow with me in this way. That's the business that I want to be in.
When you are on these sales calls and you're trying to talk to prospects about what you do and you're trying to price them out and win their business, what are the reasons that you most often get a no for? Like, why do people not want to work with you?
Well, some of it is around price and kind of incongruent expectations of what they can get for a certain budget. Sometimes business owners feel like they want to have somebody physically in person in their office. Yeah. And we have some clients that we visit in person, not in the last few months around the COVID pandemic shutdowns, but it's an exception, not the rule. We feel like the way that we operate and that our team uses cloud-based systems and digital documentation and whatnot, it lends itself to being a virtual resource. And for businesses that actually need somebody to be in person, we're probably not the right fit for them anyway, because, our hourly rates are incongruent with the scope of work that justifies having an in-person body for. Other cases I think I hinted at earlier, where if the business owner has a vision for the scope of work and the way the work gets performed that isn't going to set our team up for long-term success, then they'd be better off hiring somebody who can work more in the way that they want them to.
I know you work with people from a range and you help train people and kind of transition out as they grow. At what point have you seen where it makes sense for someone or a business not to hire an outsourced firm like yourself, and it'd be more advantageous for them just to hire people in-house for themselves?
Yeah, well, I'd say it depends on the competency and the interest that business owner has to effectively manage additional staff in-house, right? If the role can be effectively outsourced in its entirety, so the business owner doesn't have to spend a lot of time and brain power managing the function, then keep it outsourced longer, right? But if there's so much complexity and interactivity between finance, accounting, and the operations of the business, the client service of the business, then at a certain point you get economies of scale, better efficiencies when you bring those team members in-house, because they're working more closely on a full-time basis with other functions in your business. Does that make sense? So I think cost isn't really the primary driver. You should think of cost in terms of not just the hard dollar cost, but the opportunity cost of time and focus from the other people in the business that will have to shift and invest in managing that function in-house, as well as what opportunities is the business missing as a whole to have other departments running more efficiently with better integration if you brought the work in-house. And until you get to that inflection point, outsourcing makes a lot of sense.
No, 100%. I guess kind of like a flip side of that question, or maybe a different note. I know you make custom engagements for everybody. Has there ever been a point in time when a certain client wants something done a certain way, and it's maybe not the right way to do something, or it's just like not the way you would specifically do it, your business would do it, where at that point you wouldn't want to take that client on and they should just go and hire somebody and then manage the person themselves because they want it done in a very specific manner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. If our team is not going to be set up to succeed objectively from our best practice and the standards that we hold ourselves accountable to, if we're not going to be proud of our work product, and if the client isn't going to perceive our work as high value and be satisfied, then why even start, right? It needs to be a partnership that is mutually beneficial. It's a win-win for everybody, and it's sustainable. So there have been situations like that. Are you looking for me to give a specific example?
No, I'm just more or less just looking at is that a right mentality to think? Like, is there a certain point where people don't make sense for outsourcing and they're just better off, despite their size, to go ahead and insource it, or just, build it out themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, there's also businesses where it makes perfect sense to outsource 100% of the finance and accounting functions today, But as the business grows or changes, then that answer changes. And when that happens, we actively work with our clients to use our recruiting know-how and resources to help them recruit and then eventually train and transition responsibilities over to an in-house hire. And it may be that the business has a high volume of time-consuming data entry that just isn't avoidable. And at our hourly billing rate, it doesn't make sense for us to keep doing that work. So we help them hire a lower level junior accountant directly on their payroll that can sit on a 10 key and just punch numbers all day. And our team works as a controller to oversee that work, review and reconcile, and as a backup so that if that person is out sick or has turnover, our team can jump in and continue keeping that work moving forward without the business having to stop and slow down and have a vacant seat. In other cases, the business might have more higher level needs. They're out raising capital and negotiating partnership deals with strategic partner businesses, and they really need like a CFO or a finance manager who's available full time to service those needs of the business. But that person is too busy and too important to be spent paying bills and running payroll. And so our team will retain those lower level functions and support that higher level internal hire.
This all makes a ton of sense, and then we definitely appreciate you sharing these insights here today. Another question we ask everybody is, if you had to do this all over again, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, well, when I was first starting out, I told my prospects that if they hired my team to do the bookkeeping, they'd get me to be their CFO for free, basically, or for the same hourly rate that our bookkeepers were charging. And that didn't scale very well. After the first dozen or so clients, I didn't have any more time to build my business or do the other things that I should be doing. So I would definitely not do that anymore. It's more, I'm selling my team and the value that we can deliver as a team. I'm not selling anything about me as a person or as a billable resource.
So you tell everybody that you're going to be their CFO and all that sounds fine. And you think that gets them on board, which maybe it does in the early days, right? It gets them onto the team. How do you go about walking back that promise? How do you go about saying, hey, I actually, I'm not going to be your guy anymore, and now this person's going to be your guy or gal? Well, what does that come?
Well, 6.5 years later, I don't think I have any of those clients anymore because it's not sustainable, right? I couldn't continue committing my time to be that effective resource for them long term. And so ultimately, I guess what I was doing was bridging a gap. They weren't necessarily the right client fit for us to begin with, but I was bridging the gap as a fractional CFO to make it work. I have a few CFOs on staff now, W-2 employees of our firm, that can effectively play that role with new accounts. But anyway, for those particular businesses, ultimately, we just help them either insource or transition to another service provider that was a better fit for their needs long term. And it was a case-by-case basis we had to deal with. In some other cases, I was able to effectively change the engagement with our clients so they stopped coming directly to me and instead learned to rely on and interact directly with my staff to address their needs, because my staff is very competent and was doing a great job, and I just didn't need to be stuck in the middle playing a game of telephone.
Yeah, that was an experience that I had as well. And I tried to retain the bulk of the clients. Some left, some stayed, but it was kind of that same thing as like, look, Tom's smarter than me anyway. Mm-hmm. And this is all he's doing. And I'm trying to scale the business. I'm not going to be able to invest the time and energy into your account that needs to be invested in order to provide you a great service. So go touch base with Tom. If you don't like it, let me know and we'll figure something else out. And that went over okay, but that was really the only time. And I did a bulk of these at once. And it was really the only time that I had to figure out how to not have client relationships anymore. And now it's just as simple as saying, I'm not the point of contact for anybody. And you have to go, it's going to be my team who are all amazing and they absolutely crush it. And if that's not good enough, if you want me, then it's just not going to work. And I've actually had a conversation about this with another group that I'm sort of affiliated with. And their thought is like, oh, you should create like some sort of membership site, where they pay you $100 a month and you get 500 people in there. And that's where they get quote unquote access to you, because you'll go in and do like a weekly Q&A or something for an hour or something like that. I thought that was kind of interesting too. So definitely a lot of ways to approach the access to the CEO.
It's interesting. Well, I've done a few other solutions too. One is I doubled or tripled my billing rate for my time, depending on what rate it was starting at with those clients originally. And that was a very direct incentive for the clients to shift their focus to work directly with my team at a lower cost. And another approach is some client relationships, it does make sense for me to stay engaged on a regular, ongoing basis as an active resource because maybe they're a very strategic partner. They have access to connect me with other prospective clients or other resources, or my team and I are learning a great deal from our engagement with that client that we'll be able to institutionalize as knowledge and best practices to service other accounts in the future. So sometimes I look at those as investments in sales or in proficiency and industry, expertise.
One of the things we actually didn't get to touch on too much during today's interview, but that was on sales. Now that you're not working with clients anymore, you have all these other things to do to scale the business. Are you doing sales at this point, or you have somebody else doing sales?
I am. I've hired a few salespeople in the past. I have a salesperson currently who I'm very happy with, but it takes a lot of time to develop those professional referral relationships and to really get the business volume flowing both ways. So, I need to change the way I behave in order to support my salesperson most effectively. If I just keep acting as the only salesperson for the company, even though I have another salesperson over here, they're going to naturally pale in comparison to me because they're not the owner of the business. They're not the CFO. So who would want to talk to the salesperson when I'm making myself available as an alternate, right? So yeah, I need to shift gears and change my approach to really position my sales function to scale the way that I want the business to scale. I can't be everywhere at once, and I can only onboard certain number of clients myself in a given time period. And when the business gets too large, we have natural churn with clients that run out of money and go out of business or outgrow our platform and graduate to internal, hiring in-source resources. And so that natural attrition is, I'm losing clients out the bottom at the same rate that I'm bringing clients in at the top. So I can't possibly grow this business any bigger if I don't approach sales differently at this point.
That makes a ton of sense. And with the salesperson specifically, how did you end up hiring that person? Were they also a skilled salesperson, or were they, how did you end up, making that hire?
Yeah, well, I've tried different salesperson profiles over the years. And I first was looking for people who were very integrated into a professional referral network and had experience in sales, but not necessarily finance and accounting competency. And it turns out for the high level of service that we're offering our clients, that wasn't a good fit because those people weren't able to speak intelligently about the real value of what we offer. They weren't able to use X-ray vision to see into the prospective client's business and understand what their real pain points were and how our team and our approach was going to be the right fit. So I recognize I need to have people that have actually worked in accounting and finance roles themselves before they shifted to a sales focus. So my current salesperson has worked as a controller in the past and has been doing sales for other accounting services companies in most of his prior career before he came to work for us here. And so that, gives him the experience and the jumping off point to have those intelligent conversations with our referral partners and with prospective clients.
Makes a lot of sense. And I know we're coming up on time here. So, if our listeners here wanted to learn more about you and supporting strategies, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Well, supportingstrategies.com/LA for Los Angeles will get you to the landing page for my practice. You can email me, mwald, MWALD, @supportingstrategies.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to help. I also do lots of mentoring at local accelerators and tech incubator programs. I'm a guest lecturer at universities around Southern California. So I'm pretty easy to find online.
Awesome. Well, we definitely thank you for coming on the show today. It's been very insightful and looking forward to putting it out there.
Thank you both very much. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a review on iTunes and share the show with other business owners who may be facing their own growth challenges. And if you own a professional services firm, consider joining our private community. The Staying Power Collective is a community where owners of accounting, law, and consulting firms discuss best practices for running and growing virtual businesses. You'll get access to our Slack group, and you'll have a Zoom meeting once a month with a small group of other firm owners. To apply for the group, head on over to www.stayingpowercollective.com and fill out the brief form. And if you have suggestions for future topics or guests, or if you have general questions or feedback, send us an email at contact@stayingpowercollective.com. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great rest of your week.